This is Coffee with Kelly, a dynamic podcast that's dedicated to driving positive change in school safety. I'm your host, Ethan Woodman, Product Marketing Specialist for Crisis Go, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Kelly Moore, Senior School Safety Specialist for Crisis Go. Our mission is to empower you with essential knowledge, tools, and inspiration required to foster a safer and more secure school environment. We hope this podcast will be the catalyst for transformation in your schools. Join us as we continue to dive into the world of school safety. Well, good afternoon, Kelly.
This is becoming a habit, Ethan. Although yesterday was my fault.
That's true. You're a busy man. You're a wanted man now. More often.
Yeah, it was I don't get an opportunity to dip my toe into the pond of from which I came. So I was invited to be an observer at a large scale incident tabletop as an observer to give some pointers and so forth based upon my experience here in Virginia. So I spent all day yesterday really working through that with them and so forth. So good experience, met a lot of good people. We all have got a long way to go, I guess. But they're working in the right direction. And that's the good thing is there was a lot of good conversations. And when we talk about relationships and how important they are to this realm of school safety, is you don't ever want to exchange business cards for the first time at an incident. You want that done long before. And the real takeaway from yesterday was, so it was a USAR exercise, which is urban search and rescue, which is primarily collapsed buildings and stuff like earthquakes and terrorist attacks. Like the USARs were the ones in 9/11. It was those people who were going into those buildings, right? They have special training. So like I say many times, it's relationships. It's about building relationships. And this yesterday was just an example of that, where they said, when we're going through the after action, what was the best thing that you got out of this? Understanding of what people's capabilities are and relationships. Now I see faces. Now I understand who I'm talking to at the other side of the phone call or the radio. And these are people who have never met before. Some of them have, obviously. Some of them were familiar with everybody, and some of them had never spoke to anybody, some of these people, ever. Of course, I was there, and being relatively new to the state of Virginia, I knew one person going into that. And so I walked out with several business cards and promises to meet in the future and discuss things. So that's good. But it goes to show you how important it is. These things aren't cheap for people to put on when you're putting on this type of exercise, because in order to get the resources there, they have to travel from out of the area, unless you're doing it in their area, right? So now you have all of this expense, and that's tough to do. But that being said, when you're sitting down at a table and you're just walking through an incident, then you're creating relationships. You're talking to somebody who you've never talked to before. And so the next time when you actually need them, you can say, hey, Mike, remember me? We talked at the exercise a couple of months ago. Oh, yeah. I have a problem. I need to resolve it. Can you help? Or you have an incident. They come in and says, hi, I'm Kelly. And you say, I'm Ethan. And I say, oh, yeah, didn't we meet at that tabletop a couple months ago? Yes. Automatic step up in understanding who you were and what you were doing.
Yeah.
And what your capabilities are, right?
You don't spend all that time
even if you struggle there,
questions and
even if you struggled there, now you have an experience that you've experienced together, right? So now you have something in common, and now it takes all of that out of the way. But that's why it's so important to get these things. Just a big shout out to the Virginia Department of Emergency Management and the Virginia Department of Fire Programs for inviting me and hosting me. It was fantastic. But I'm going to tell you this because you will get a kick out of this. Guess what happened while I was there?
An actual incident?
an incident.
Would have guessed.
Guess what happened? Guess what the incident was?
Give me a clue. Like, where were you actually located?
We were in, I can't say the location because they wanted to keep all of that stuff private. I was at a university emergency operations center.
You had an unknown threat on campus notification.
No, way too serious.
Way too high. Okay.
This is a Kelly type incident.
I'm just using your methodology of going to the worst case scenario. I'm just working down. Okay.
Good.
So
no, it's a Kelly incident.
Kelly incident.
Mm-hmm.
The incident was they didn't have any coffee.
No, but close.
I just went super low level.
Yeah, you're close.
The bathrooms weren't functional.
Nope.
Okay.
I'll save everyone the further agony. My coffee got spilled.
Oh, I should have guessed that.
Yeah, right.
How did I not guess that?
Yeah, it was a total accident. It wasn't me that spilled it, but it was my coffee.
But maybe you
didn't have tables for everyone.
Not great spot. So you weren't thinking in your prevention and mitigation phases very well. That's what you're telling me.
Well, I thought,
man, it shows up late and spills coffee.
Yeah.
Dang.
So, but it was fun. It was kind of like there was probably 40 people there. I was the one that spilled the coffee. Nice. So, yeah, it's awesome.
I bet you made a lot of friends, though.
I made a lot of contacts, which is very good.
I think Kelly makes friends everywhere he goes.
It depends how you define friends, I guess.
On every one of our trips. Yeah, I mean, I guess your definition of a friend would be different than my dad's definition of a friend. My dad will legitimately make friends everywhere he goes.
Yeah.
Like phone number in his phone, address.
So I have a lot of those from yesterday, but for me to call somebody a friend usually takes more than one meeting.
Okay. Kelly has some high standards. Oh man. All right. So I'll move on here.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about an article, which will kind of very quickly lead into similar instances that are happening quite often lately.
Mm-hmm.
So in Texas, there was what we're seeing described as a walkout in protest to ICE.
At schools. Walkout.
It was during school hours. Students went out, and from the article, it appears that they basically surrounded an intersection on all four sides and actually at some point blocked an entire lane. There was police presence there at some point kind of managing it, I guess, if you will. But they did say at some point the police were pulled to other active incidences, so they actually had to leave. And it was after they left that this incident happened where a person driving through the intersection, I'm trying to say this without getting into the politics of it, but someone that did not agree with them, basically, it sounds like they may have confronted them. And of course, the article doesn't really give you, a lot of the details before what actually transpired. They actually include a video. The video starts off with this guy. Right as it starts, it's this guy, like, it looks like him throwing a high school girl to the ground. And then immediately after, it's like 10 or so kids just piling on him and just like kicking him and punch him in the head and just beating the snot out of this guy. So
yeah. So
what do you say to that one, Kelly?
Yeah, you can see my face, right?
Yeah, it's like when does free speech affect school safety in a negative way?
Well, let's talk about this. We've talked about this kind of before in the overarching category of do no harm. Do not place your kids in a position where they can be harmed, right? That's what we're trying to do here. And we have a duty to protect our kids. I send my child to school to learn. I don't send my child to go to school to be let out to run around the streets. However that's defined, right?
Yeah.
I expect my kids to be there. And I think the vast majority of us expect our kids to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen several of these over the last few days where kids are being used as a tool. And again, I'm trying not to get political here, but it's hard not to. But to make a political statement when the kids are likely, some kids might understand, but unless you're in an advanced developmental stage or you are active in the politics or you are older in years and you're talking about this stuff in school, you likely don't understand what's going on. And when schools say that the children are exercising their First Amendment right, it's hard for me to sit back and say, do they understand what their rights are?
And I think, before this you brought up, and I remember seeing this article as well, where it was like elementary kids, like out in the recess area, I guess. But like the recess area had an opening to the street. It was kind of weird. I was definitely like in the city kind of stuff. But
yeah, but there's stuff going around online about elementary kids being ushered out of school, given political signs, marched down the sidewalks and in the roads and stuff. I gotta, just say, are you kidding me?
yeah.
Take the politics out of it. Take everything else out of it, right? But you are actively taking kids out of a relatively safe area
Yeah.
and marching them down
The street
with down the street with likely insufficient supervision to keep them safe.
So I'll give you an example. I think I just saw this today in a school very close to me. There was, the where they were was right on the street, and it looked like one teacher trying to like hold them back, but it was like a whole crowd of kids. I mean, there must have been a couple hundred kids, and
Right.
in the video you see cars whizzing by, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 feet away from the first kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what are you doing?
There was at least one incident where kids, I want to say it was in Georgia, but I'm not 100%, where one or two kids were hit by a car because they were in traffic,
That's
right?
crazy.
And we're finding that there's several. Obviously, the ones that get the most views are showing up more and more, obviously, because there's some sort of violence or they affirm a message or what have you.
Mm,
And people want to see this chaos, right? And it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on or the road you're on, whatever, however you want to say that. But it's crazy that we as adults who are charged with the protection of our children without the permission of their parents are walking their kids out of school, handing them signs and protesting or encouraging the older ones to write signs. And a lot of the signs and the messages that are being voiced or viewed, however that is, you sit back and you go, you can't even spell the words. You should be in school, right? And and these are kids that are in their high school years. And we as adults, and
mm.
I will say this to both sides, don't fully understand everything that's happening and why it happens and so forth. And yet you think our kids do? And our kids are notorious, especially in those adolescent years, notorious for not making good decisions
That's pretty
and
evident.
escalating things and
Yeah,
becoming involved in mob actions, you
easily
know,
influenced.
influenced. Yeah. And it just, you sit back and you go, oh my God, why are we allowing this to happen? And so then, we could go on that tangent for a while, but I don't really want to. You can just say, from a safety perspective, stop it. You are responsible for those kids. Now let's take one step. If something happens to those kids, who's liable?
I think if they didn't get the permission of the parent, then probably the school.
Even if they did, the permission is given with the understanding that they're going to take due care to take care of that child and protect that child. So who do you think has the deep pockets, right? The schools do.
Yeah.
And there was one, and we were talking about this before we started the recording, but we were talking about this, and there was one where there was a teacher who was being attacked. That was the headline: teacher
Yeah.
attacked at student demonstration.
Yeah. That's what I brought up initially.
One of those, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know if that's a valid one, but let's take the scenario. A teacher is out there with their children, right? And the teacher tries to, and again, let's take the politics out of it, just trying to keep the kids safe. And there's this mob mentality and things start to escalate and they start beating the crap out of the teacher. Now who's responsible? The school. And if the teacher fights and the teachers fight back to protect themselves because it has escalated, because the law enforcement was called to something at the time that was more serious than what they were doing. And now it's gone internal, school teachers versus kids, right? And what was the expectation?
Yeah,
what was the expectation? And
what's
who's
the end
going
result?
Right? Well, what's the expectation? Why would you take them there? What do you expect them to learn? It's a learning day.
I guess so.
Right? What is one of the biggest concerns for teachers? Instructional time. So if you wanted to say, what is the logic here? Then you would have to look at, okay, maybe this is a lesson in civics, right? This is how people express their opinions, blah, blah, blah. But at what cost? Could you have done that differently? Could you have done that without endangering the children, without endangering the teachers? And I will tell you that when you start getting into this mob mentality, one teacher for 30 kids is not enough, especially when you have high school age kids. If that gets into this uncontrolled, poor judgmental activities where kids are escalating and feeding off each other, something gets thrown, somebody gets pushed, somebody, they start stepping over those boundaries little by little. And then all of a sudden it's in full on Donnybrook and the teacher jumps in to try to break it up. I don't know what happened in the video. None of these videos are complete and don't tell the whole story. I get that. But I'm just saying, in the realm of possibility, here's what's happening. And if my kid gets injured, I'm going after the school. If I'm a teacher and I get injured because I was encouraged and or I was not prevented from doing this and I get injured, I'm going after the school. If I go and try to stop this and I have to physically use physical force to prevent these kids and I get injured, I'm going after the schools. If I'm the parent of a child and there are criminal charges out of this, who do you think could be held liable for criminal charges there?
I mean, anyone that's initiating the fight and then anyone who allowed the fight to occur.
So if we have a trend where we are relieving to some extent the criminal liability of kids and transferring that to parents.
Yes, we've seen that happen a couple of times.
Right? We've seen that happen several times. Remember who's the parent here? The teachers are.
So you don't think that could, because the other cases that we've seen where, a kid gets a hold of a weapon because it wasn't stored properly and they go in, they shoot someone, kill them, or hurt them or whatever, and then the parent will actually has been charged, right? Do you think that would ever happen if the parent encouraged the kid to be involved in this protest and the kid ended up hurting a kid really bad?
Absolutely does. There's all sorts of negligent activities or
I would think it might be a little bit harder to prove because there's not a tangible
right. But
thing
here's we're looking at it from the parental perspective, right?
Sure.
Right. Who's the parent during school hours?
Yeah, I mean the person who's responsible for them, so the teacher.
That's right. So there's law that they use all of the time, parentis in loco or something like that, right? There's a law there. There is a law. And so they say that all the time. Legally, I'm the parent. You don't get to come get your kid. You don't get to do this. And I can do this as their parent. I don't have to tell you what's going on with them. I don't have to do this because... Right? So you don't get to conditionally do that.
Yeah.
And we've been saying this for a long time. You don't get to say, I'm the parent while they're here, and then back away from that responsibility when that kid is troubled, when there's issues and so forth. When they're with you, 80% of their awake time. You don't get to say, not my child. Wait a second. You're saying that you have the parental rights from 7 o'clock in the morning until 5 in the afternoon or 5 in the evening. And then they go home for an hour or two, and then they're in bed by 8 o'clock. And then they sleep all the way through, and then that cycle starts again. You cannot say that you don't have responsibility there. It makes no sense to me.
Do you think, I don't know if this is a pertinent question or not, do you think that these kids that are doing walkouts, do you think it's up to the teacher to allow them to do it? Or is there a step up above that, someone saying, hey, to all the classes, we're allowing you to do this? How much influence does the teacher, like, let's say I'm a teacher and I'm totally against it. Can I actually stop my students from participating in that while other classes are participating? I don't know if that question makes sense or not, but
yeah, no, it does. It's like, but then it becomes a mob rule, right? Mob mentality is, I want to do it. Everyone else is walking out, right?
But now all the kids are going to come at you and say, it's my free speech. And then they're going
to. Okay, let's talk about that. Let's take it out of this realm. Can you decide to just get up and walk out given day without consequences?
Without consequences. I'm sure there's consequences.
So if there are consequences, then you don't have a right to do it, right? So if you can get penalized, suspension, expulsion, detention, what have you, you don't have a right. You have to be at school. So it brings up a different question, right? So attendance is part of how most of, or I'm going to say most, but I don't know the actual numbers. A lot of schools get paid average daily attendance. Do they get paid for that time that they're not in school?
No.
Question. I don't know. But those are questions that, wait a second. You took my kid out. If I come in and have you ever heard, well, you wouldn't because you went to homeschool.
Hey, no.
Well, it's a school thing, and I'm not sure that you would have heard it, right?
Yeah.
So it's called a minimum day.
A minimum day?
A minimum day. So
okay, yeah,
there are days. So there are days in the school schedule that they call minimum days, and what they are is to allow like professional development, parent-teacher conferences.
Okay.
There's other reasons for it, but they're spattered out about the school calendar. So a minimum day is the number of hours that are required for a student to be at school in order to be counted.
What the heck?
Right? So a full day, if somebody stays at school all day, that's obvious.
Sure.
But then the question starts coming in, well, what if they leave an hour early? Does that still count? Well, that still counts. Well, how about an hour and a half? So the legislators have come up and said, you have to be in, and I don't know, I'm going to say 4 out of 6 hours or whatever, right? I don't know what the actual number is, but they say this is the minimum number of hours that they need to be in. That's one of the reasons you have to go in and check them out and check them in so that they can keep track of that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. So now all of these kids, there's no planned field trip. There's no lesson plan. There's no activity around this. They're taken out of school by their teachers for how long? Who knows? What if they're taken out with the intent to go back, but the kids don't go back? Some of them say, I'm staying, right? And you don't get all of those kids, right? So now the kids that you had in school that you were responsible for, some of them decided, no, I'm not going back to school. And you tell me that doesn't happen, especially at the secondary level?
Or that some kid doesn't go, hey, I'm just going to take off and go hang out at the coffee bar or something,
That's right. But that's what I'm talking about. They just don't go back to school. They're either going to hang out at the demonstration longer, or they're going to just not go back because what are you going to do? Or let's say they don't want to participate.
And they're just sitting in the class.
They don't want to be the only child sitting at the desk, right? So they say, okay, I'm out. What are you going to do?
I'm going to do my own
come back with the rest of them. Really? I didn't want to go protest.
These parents,
I didn't want to exercise my free speech, right?
That sounds like a
then
mess.
they go up. And that's what I'm saying is why are we, and we have to say that the school in Texas said there's no more of that.
Yeah, he did.
Right?
I think it was the superintendent would
If you want
recognize
to
that like
go,
this was
this is
not good.
bad,
Yeah.
right? But there are still schools doing it. You see on the social media platforms, you see that they're still doing it.
And the thing is that, we've been talking about this, and maybe we're giving people the sense of like there was no warning. It just had happened randomly. They didn't have time to prepare or anything like that. But in a lot of the cases, that's not true. And we have evidence of that because in our group that we're a part of, we've seen that. We've seen that they'll actually print out flyers and posters or put them on social media and say, we're planning this for this date. Please participate.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's
Yep.
there. So they know about it.
Yep. And there's sign construction. There's chants that are going on. There's leadership or lack of leadership, depending on your perspective, by school staff. There's just so many things that are wrong with this. And not even from and I've talked a little bit about politics. I've tried to stay away from the politics, but the fact that this is totally a safety issue, there are so many safety concerns here that I just don't know how schools cover themselves on that.
Yeah,
And
it's not. I don't think it's worth the risk.
there's just
it would go like even if they were. It doesn't matter what they're protesting to me. If they're putting these kids out and if they're putting their safety at risk, it's just not worth it. And I know it's like, okay, your safety is always at risk to some level every day, but like I think this is just putting their safety at risk at an unnecessary level.
Yeah. The potential for volatility is huge. These things are highly volatile, highly emotional.
Yeah.
And we have adults that aren't acting correctly.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's like obviously that guy that went by and in his looked like his truck or something. It's like just don't get involved. So
right.
It's like obviously if you see school kids out in the schoolyard or whatever protesting, just don't get involved. Just keep going.
But those are not only addressing the potential volatility of these things, but the potential for violence and the potential for confrontation is huge.
Yeah.
Because
you're kind of asking for it at that point.
The whole point of this is to get the emotions of at least half of the argument. Provoke an emotion.
Yeah.
Right. And I would be very interested if anyone listening has statistics of how many people have changed their mind based upon a protest. Oh yeah, one way or the other.
Some person drives by. You know what? I'm wrong and you're right.
You know what? I should be over there. I get it.
I don't.
But what's the effectiveness? I sat on a call today, completely unrelated to protests, and they're talking about doing surveys. And we talk about this all of the time in school safety and school decisions, evidence-based decisions, evidence-based practices, evidence-based blah, blah, blah. Now, we can argue about the evidence, but the process is many of the decisions are being made in schools under this umbrella of evidence-based. And this goes back to part of my book that's still in progress, that marketing ruins everything. Because evidence-based, in my opinion, isn't really evidence. There are some, obviously, but it depends on how you write the questions. It depends how you present the questions. It presents how you inform people, who you ask. There are so many things to get a good, solid survey. And I'm sure the education people say, oh, no, we have this process and it's got to be done just this way in order for it to be evidence-based, peer-reviewed, blah, 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 whatever, right? But you sit back and say, how many variables? How many whatever, right? What were the conditions and so forth? But it just kills me when we're in this space where everything is being done on the basis of evidence. And then we look at, I would love to know, what is the percentage of people who change their minds witnessing a protest.
Yeah.
Saying, I should be over on the other side of the street. These guys are idiots. I don't know. I would gather that there is zero statistics, zero evidence that protests are effective. I would just guess. And they're so emotional. They're so volatile. There's a high potential for things to go wrong. I think if I were in a school setting, and I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about something. But I would think
so
that
serious.
Yeah, right. Because it just popped in my head.
Do I need to stop the recording?
I would have a hard
this,
time.
Or
I would have a hard time for this. Right. I would have a hard time with a school that I was working at doing this. Dot, period. Let's put that to rest. That actually occurred when I was at my district. I was relatively new, and there were these, I forget what the protests were about.
What was the time? Like, what was the date?
It was late 2018, early 2019.
Was it around like the elections?
Who knows? Who knows what it was? But some of our schools walked out. And so then I said, I walked to my boss. I was relatively new there, so I didn't have, I was at the school district for a couple of years, but I was relatively new, didn't have a lot of juice. I was a low-level manager. I had the best manager's position in the entire district, but I was a district level manager. So I had some say, but I didn't really have. And when they came to me and said, "Hey, Kelly, we're doing this," I said, "You shouldn't do that." But there was nothing I could personally do to stop it. And I said, "So what's the security? What's that?" And they said, "Well, the police are going to be there. They're going to be following along. The SROs are going to be following along, and so forth." So there was some, and it was just a march. It wasn't a full-blown protest. Okay. They had a designated route. They walked around it, walked down the middle of town, turned around, walked back, right? So it was kind of controlled, but still, it didn't sit well with me that these kids are just walking out, right? And I had a little bit of lack of understanding of everything that was going on there. I was really still trying to connect the dots in the school safety realm and impacts and so forth, and really connecting my past experience with what I was currently doing. So should I have put my foot down a little bit more? Probably, but they would have just said, "Decision's been made, Kelly. There's nothing you can do about it," right? Yeah. So then you go around. You just go along with it, or you leave, right? You just say, "All right, this is on you," right? And I gave them my advice, and there were times when I worked for the school district where I gave them what I thought was good, solid advice, and they just said, "Yeah, we're gonna do something else." And so that was irritating to me, right? That gets under my craw a little bit. Yeah. But if it comes back, I can say, "This is what I did." This just kills me that we're taking. If you want to experience or show them what a protest is about, why, and then they do it on their own time, whole different story. Let them exercise it. If you want to explain to them really the ins and outs of free speech and when and why and how to use that, then I get that. But then let them make the decision. Don't you say, "We're going to go do this. It's your right. Let's go do it." Okay, we get out of school, right? I bet you more than, even in the high school ages, I bet you more than 80%, it's probably higher than that, have no idea what the First Amendment is.
Yeah. They probably can't recite it. They probably can't tell you its limitations and all that. Yep. So,
and nothing is absolute.
Yep.
So you just sit there and you go, that it just kills me because of if something happens that was all preventable by one thing.
No.
Keeping them in school. All right? Simple.
You say,
yeah, we're not going to do that. If you want to do that after my class is over, by all means, that's your choice. I'm not taking you out of class into this highly emotional, highly volatile arena. I'm not going to put you there.
That's a good way to say it.
Right? And I'm not going to set you up for failure, which is a lot of what this is. It's predictable that kids are emotional. Kids are easily manipulated. Look at all of the sexual abuse, the manipulation by adults to get kids. And while this didn't happen in that realm, it's the same type of behavior.
Yep.
We're manipulating children, and that just kills me.
I'm glad you said it because I was going to say it.
It just kills me.
Yeah. I think out of everything, that's what kind of like irks me the most is like, where did this actually stem from? I guess would be my question is like, is it something that the kids organized or was it something that was pushed?
The kids, if you're going to stick with the argument that the kids don't understand it, the kids aren't going to organize it, especially when you're talking about Kelly's story. There were a bunch of us kids, and I think I was in the 4th or 5th grade.
How do you remember that far back?
Well, I tell you, it's easier to remember that stuff than what I had for dinner last night. But 4th or 5th grade, there's a bunch of us that love to play soccer. And we said, you know what? We should come to school Saturday morning and we should play soccer until Sunday morning.
I like it.
And everyone said, oh, yeah. And then you said, okay, wait a second. How do we do that? Our parents aren't going to let us do that. How do we get food?
That might be a roadblock. Yeah.
How do we get enough water? How do we get enough things here? And like within 5 minutes, we said, yeah, we're not going to do that. Right. And today's kids, they can't organize enough to sit down and do their homework. Right. Or get a group of friends together to do something. Right. It's just to sit back and say, you know what, this is what we're going to do. We want to, even in the secondary grades, they have to go to a teacher advisor, right? So they can't just do it. They have to go to a teacher's advisor and say, hey, this is what we want to do. How do we do it? What's the best pathway? What's the best whatever? We had to go to parents, right? If we wanted to get stuff done, we had to go say, all right, I mean, how old are you in the 4th grade? 10, maybe 11 years old, something like that.
Something like that.
And you can't say, hey, we're going to go play soccer for 24 hours. What do you think? Well, my mom would have looked at me like I was crazy, right? But she would have said, well, you need to do this, this, and this. You need to get permission. You need to do that. You need to. But luckily for us, we figured it out pretty quick that we weren't going to be able to do that. But it just gets me, right?
Yep.
We're still seeing all of these other manipulations of kids and students for bad things. And it doesn't surprise me that we're doing this, but it surprises me. Right? And if we have the ability to manipulate for bad, you would think we would have the ability to manipulate for good. Maybe we should turn that around a little bit. Maybe I'm pie in the sky talking here, but it just seems like we should switch that around.
You would think. Let's
start getting these kids. There was a walkout that showed on one of the things I just looked up right when we started talking about this was 0% in this school. And I think the school was in California. 0% proficiency in math. How do you get 0%?
How's that work?
So at grade level. So they might be proficient at something else. You know, they could do plus and minuses, but that's something, you know, addition and subtraction. That's something you should be able to do in elementary school.
Yeah.
But if you can't do multiplication and division and fractions and algebra type stuff at that level, right? I mean, obviously
it's like they didn't take the class. It's like they didn't have the kids actually take the class. That's how you get 0.
Yeah, but that's the issue. Right? Is you obviously have some kids that are proficient, but in the total percentage, it might be so low that it's not measurable or it's below 1%. So,
and that's what they're actually first at school at, is to actually learn things like that. So
right. So it's hard to defend these types of actions when your school has these proficiency statuses. And there were like 4 of them, and I think the highest measure was like 23% or something like that. There wasn't anything over 50% that I remember, but you think that would be the focus. So I don't know. It just kills me. But from a safety perspective, stop doing it. It's
just stop doing it.
Just stop doing
it. Please.
Lock the doors so they can't get out. Lock your
Yeah,
teachers in
go
their room.
figure. Lock the doors. I mean, most schools have the doors locked anyways, or should,
But,
right? So.
Yep. I'm going to ask you this question.
Okay.
Get ready for it. I'm going to put you on the spot, Ethan.
Wait, let me do a couple stretches and.
All right. Get the brain stretch. Get in Kelly mode. How much of our efforts in school safety are put towards the interior of our schools, keeping the threat outside, keeping everyone
90s.
Safe on the inside?
The efforts interior wise has to be like high 90%.
Yep.
But then most.
So why are we taking them outside of the school?
Yeah. Let's take you into an environment that we haven't prepared you for.
So I've talked to you about this during our conversations about concentric circles, and the security gets less and less, right? And where is the most likely place where something could happen?
Outside of the school.
Outside of the school, where there's bottlenecks to get into the secured area, right?
Yep.
So what are we doing?
You're taking them out of a safer area and putting them into a lesser safe area without
zero protection.
Yeah, I mean, you're
right. How many times have we heard of a car running into a crowd, a shooter or potential shooter at an open gathering, a festival, TSA, right?
Yeah.
Airports, right? Even at the school, 60% of all school shootings occur outside of the school, 60 plus, because it's less than 40%.
And then you add in like little things of like those outliers of things we talked about of like, where's the most likely place that kids are storing weapons if they're bringing them to school, which is another thing we're seeing all the time. Outside.
Right.
Who's to say they're not going and picking that thing back up when they're going out and doing a protest?
Pathway to violence.
It's like,
right? What happened? Let me ask you this. This is unlikely.
The more I think about it, the worse it gets.
It gets, right? I have to apologize because this is the way I think, right? If I were contemplating violence and I decided tomorrow is that day and I hear about a walkout, what have you just done?
Your effort just got a whole lot easier.
I don't have to do it.
You've essentially removed all the barriers, literally and figuratively. Yeah.
I just cannot emphasize enough how much this goes into the face of keeping your kids safe.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you have any questions about what we discussed, leave a comment on our website at crisisgo.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on Coffee with Kelly, a discussion on school safety.